The resolution reads, Free Market President Javier Milei of Argentina has been making tangible progress toward improving the Argentinian economy. Speaking for the affirmative, Santiago Forster. Santiago, please come to the stage. Speaking for the negative, and I was given phonetic instruction in how to pronounce the name. I hope I get it right. Agustín Rombolá. Agustín Rombolá, speaking for the negative. Agustín, please come to the stage. Okay, Jane, please close the voting. Yes, no, or undecided on the resolution. Santiago, you have 17 and a half minutes to make the case. You can take the podium. Take it away, Santiago.
Freedom. Freedom is a fragile thing, and it's never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not ours by way of inheritance. It must be fought for and defended constantly by each generation, for it comes only once to a people. Not only is this quote by President Reagan an excellent segue to the debate at hand, but it's also a very opportunistic moment to say that it's on Joe Biden's birthday. Thank you, Gene. Also, happy birthday to you. And thank you, Reason Foundation and the Soho Forum for making all of this possible. Also, thank you Fundacion Free and Enlaces for supporting me throughout this event. And I'd also like to give you a thanks, the audience, watching here live and watching from home, for supporting this type of event. So thank you so much. First, I'd like to introduce myself very briefly. My name is Santiago Forster. I study international business and international affairs at Northeastern University. I'm a senior there, and I'm a classical liberal by conviction. Also, simultaneously, I'm a supporter of free enterprise and commerce, and I think that Milei is doing a very good job in improving tangible measurements in the economy. Also, I happen to work in corporate taxes simultaneously, and I'm an Argentine American. So I'd also like to thank Agustín for coming all the way from Argentina. I'd like to give a little brief introduction of him. Agustín is 33 and a member of the oldest party in Argentina. And when they governed, they created hyperinflation. I'm 21 and defending the economic policies of a party that has governed for less than a year. I guess experience isn't everything on a resume, Agustín. So, first off, I'd like to make a clear distinction. Agustín's line within the party, the Unión Cívica Radical, is even further left than the most of the party. He responds to Martín Lustó. Martín Lustó is the former Minister of Economy of Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, and I'm going to get into all this. But one thing that I want everyone to understand is that the Unión Cívica Radical, on Agustín's line of the party, is for hyperinflation and is for increasing taxes. They tried to promote with Lustó the Ley 125, Law 125, to increase taxes on the agro industry. So, and that didn't pass back in 2007, 2008. That didn't pass. They weren't successful in doing that. But that is what they want to do when they have the power to do so. So, first, I'd like to, and also, one quick thing. That is not against everyone who is a radical, everyone who is within his party. There is also a branch of that party that is helping Milei liberate Argentina's economy. So I want to give those people merit as well, the people within Agustin's party who are helping, but Agustin and his boss, unfortunately, aren't on that side. So I'd like to define the terms and the model for this debate. So the terms are the following. Let me start with a resolution real quick to remind you one more time. Free market President Javier Milei of Argentina has been making tangible progress toward improving the Argentinian economy. All right, so who is Javier Milei? Javier Milei is an anarcho-capitalist, self-defined, and he rose to fame going to TV shows and speaking about economics on those shows. He was very passionate, he had a bravado to him, and that's what appealed to the masses. And in a runoff election, when he presented himself as president in a context of hyperpolarization in Argentina, when he presented himself to be president of Argentina, they went on a runoff election between him and Peronist candidate Sergio Tomás Massa, the minister who created the highest inflation in the recent 20 years, and Milei won with 56% of the popular vote in that runoff election, giving him a clear economic mandate from the people to make radical economic change. Then, what is the free market? The freer the market, the freer the people. That's the logic behind that. Deregulation and its decentralization. And it is essentially putting monetary and fiscal and structural changes at the forefront and reducing obstacles in those three pillars of the economy. Then, what is tangible progress in the economy? That's another part we have to unpack from this resolution. Tangible progress is improving the economic indicators of the three legs that I just mentioned: fiscal, monetary, and structural or institutional, however you want to call it. And in doing so, you improve the lives of the middle and vulnerable classes and all Argentines. Then I want to just say what my model of a country is. It's exactly that. It's improving those metrics. It's making people's lives easier, making business people do commerce in an easier fashion as the advanced Western civilized world does in a normal society. And Agustin's model, as I mentioned, is a model of a country that suffers from hyperinflation, as they did when they also governed in the 80s after our military dictatorships, where we reached 3,000% hyperinflation under Raúl Alfonsín, which was from his party. And seriously, given these pillars, I'll provide a brief economic history of Argentina now. In the early 20th century, we were a global leader in the economy. Our wages were some of the highest in the world. Our GDP per capita was the highest in the world, and in terms of nominal GDP, we rivaled every advanced nation in the world. One coincidence is we didn't have a central bank back then. Then, in the 1930s, came the centralization of the Argentine economy, and we created the central bank. In doing so, our monetary base expanded significantly, and this, in my opinion, was the first signs of an economy that was going to suffer in the following decades, because then in the 40s and the 50s, Juan Domingo Perón came to power, installed a social welfare state in which massive programs were funded through fiscal deficit, through the expansion of the monetary base, and in doing so, deficit spending reached unsustainable levels, and by 1952, it had reached 38% inflation. That's the highest recorded ever by that time in Argentina. Then, in the 60s and 70s, instability and hyperinflation with our horrible military regimes came into place. These military regimes committed human rights violations, but also they were very poor in managing the economy. And what happened here is that they had a state corporatist style of economic governance, and hyperinflation reached 444% in 1976 under the military dictatorships. After that, market reforms and missed opportunities came along when actually before, in the 1980s, after the military dictatorships, we had Raúl Alfonsín, the father of democracy, and in that regard, no one questions that, but in economic policy, he flunked. He flunked because the fiscal deficit ballooned, debt became unsustainable, And as I mentioned, inflation reached 3,000% in 1989. And I want to mention one thing here. In this government, Rodolfo Terraño, which was the Minister of Public Works and Services of the Radical Party, what he did was he tried to privatize firms towards the end of Alfonsin's government, showing a hypocrisy in their way of economic governance. On the one hand, they did very poor fiscal and monetary policy, expanding the monetary base and ballooning the fiscal deficit. But on the other hand, they tried to save themselves by privatizing firms at the end of Alfonsin's government, which wasn't even successful because the Peronists blocked that. And then in the 90s, Menem came along. Menem was a Peronist, but he governed as a classical liberal. So what happened is that there were missed opportunities here as well, and Menem tried to do free market reforms, pegged the dollar to the peso to 0% inflation yearly, and what happened there was that Menem relied too heavily on foreign investment, and he also did not carry out the appropriate fiscal policies, and public spending remained high, unemployment hit 25%, and GDP shrank by 20% under Menem. But then that segued over to the Corralito, the 2001 crisis, which was one of the gravest crises in Argentina's history. After that, we had the Kirchner legacy, which the Kirchners governed Argentina for basically the last 20 years. Inflation under their governments averaged 20 to 30% annually, but the real beauty was when they governed the last 4 years before Milei, and inflation reached 113%. And JP Morgan had estimated that if they had won the election, inflation was going to reach 190% last year. 190% last year. So, deficits funded by money printing destroyed purchasing power, while poverty climbed over 40% during their last government. Corruption and cronyism flourished, and now we have Milei. So, what is Milei doing, and what are the arguments that sustain his economic policy, and why he's making tangible progress in the economy? I'll break it into three main arguments. The first would be monetary. The second would be fiscal. And the third would be institutional or structural, however you want to call it. It's the same. So, starting with monetary. What has Milei done in the monetary sphere? Here I'd like to start with a phrase that Milei repeats a lot, and it is the following: inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. So the point is that the central bank was stabilized, and zero money issuance was carried out so far in Milei's government. The central bank was stabilized because reserves increased to $30.282 billion thanks to policies that strengthened trade balance and eliminated inflationary instruments like remunerated liabilities. And then zero monetary issuance was very important from reducing monthly inflation from 25.5% monthly to only 2.7% monthly currently. 25.5% a year ago with Massa and Cristina Kirchner, 2.7% currently. That is the result of good economic monetary policy. Then the fiscal. In the fiscal argument, I'd like to present another quote that adds on to the quote that Milei likes to use. And this quote is the following. Thomas Sargent, a very famous economist, said, "Persistent inflation is always and everywhere a fiscal phenomenon." Persistent inflation. So what does this mean? It builds off Milei's favorite quote, because over time, if you have poor fiscal policy, then that will create a long-lasting situation for inflation to be pervasive over decades. The point here that I'm trying to make with fiscal policy is that Milei achieved financial equilibrium in record time, there were twin surpluses, the public spending was reduced, and taxes were announced to be reduced as well. My evidence for this? Well, in the first point, there were twin surpluses for the first time in a long time, fiscal financial surplus of 0.4% of the GDP, and primary surplus of 1.7% of the GDP. This eliminated net borrowing and monetary financing from the central bank. Also, public spending reduction. So, what happened in public spending? 30%, over 30% of public spending was reduced during Milei's government. That's super important because why? When Milei started, there were 18 ministries. Ministries would be the equivalent of a department in the US government, so like State Department, for example. There were 18 ministries, and Milei reduced them to 8. So that was a reduction of 10 ministries as soon as he got into power. And then 22,000 public sector employees were eliminated from the workforce. So all this public spending alleviated the fiscal situation quite a lot, the lack of public spending. And then there was an announcement to reduce the Impuesto País, which the Impuesto País is one of the most grave taxes in Argentina, 17.5% tax rate, among many other taxes, being imposed on the business people of Argentina, and it has been announced that by December, there will be a reduction to 7.5% of this tax rate. So that's next month. And what happens here, I don't know if you're familiar with the Laffer curve, but Dr. Laffer, who is also a mentor of mine and a very dear person in my life, I think that his theory with the Laffer curve is fantastic in this context. Why? Argentina was not even on the Laffer curve from how many taxes we were charging our business people and our regular citizens. The Laffer curve, just for context, indicates government revenue and the ideal point of taxation. So Argentina's taxes were so high that we were being inefficient in creating government revenue. People were evading taxes. So I just want people to understand that when there is an announcement to reduce taxes in this way, this is fantastic in this context. And then lastly, in this context as well, BBVA, which BBVA is a very prestigious bank in Argentina and many other countries, estimates a growth of 6% of the GDP in 2025, while JP Morgan just today announced a forecast of 8.5% growth of the economy in 2025 in Argentina. This is a miracle after the necessary contraction of 4% as a result of the abysmal fiscal and monetary inheritance left by Cristina Kirchner and Sergio Massa to Milei. It's a miracle that Argentina is being projected to grow at the rate that it's being projected so next year, 2025. Then I'd like to give some institutional and structural arguments real quick. First, labor and administrative reform was done, and under the ley bases, privatizations, public employment reforms, and administrative procedures, modernizations were introduced. So this is very important. Why? Because these measures aim to reduce state discretion and encourage private investment. Then deregulation of transportation and commerce was done, which is also important for sectors like agribusiness, aviation, and more. And this was all done under the new ministry created. 10 were eliminated, but one had to be created, which is called Ministry of Deregulation and Transformation of the State. So, thank you. So then, one more thing. I want to address a point that Agustín is probably going to bring up, which is, just in case, to tackle the argument that the middle class and the most vulnerable are being forgotten, I want to mention a couple things as to why I think they're not. There's been controlled inflation. Inflation is a thievery, it's a robbery of people's purchasing power. So that's very important for the middle class and the vulnerable classes. Second, there has been increased social benefits. So people, for example, pensions have been adjusted above the inflation rate. And third, targeted social policies. People are being capacitated to depend less on the state and on social welfare and be reintegrated back into the job market, all under this new administration. So I want to remind people, sadly, how confused and contradictory the Unión Cívica Radical is, unfortunately, and that when they had the chance to govern with Alfonsín and Lustó, they governed with hypocrisy and mostly against common sense economics. But Agustín, if you want to join Milei's space, I'm sure your talents could be better used with him. I'm sure that if you want to embrace free market capitalism, he'll accept you in his space. So, yeah, and thank you.
Time's up.
And with that, I'd just like to close and say that I think this has been enough burden of proof to show how Javier Milei's government has made tangible progress in the Argentine economy. Thank you.
Agustín, 17 and a half minutes of rebuttal. Agustín, would you like to take the podium? Yeah.
Okay. Good evening to everyone. My introduction was made by Santiago, so I think I'm not gonna duplicate words. Thank you, Gene Epstein. Thank you, Jane Manton. Thank you, Soho Forum and Reason Foundation for making this possible. Thank you, Santiago Forster, for thinking of me for this debate. For me, it's an honor to be here. It's a true honor to be here. It's gonna be an unforgettable memory for me. Did you notice that Santiago spent half of his time doing a history class, because there are so few achievements of Javier Milei that he had to go through history, because you cannot tell anything good about Milei's administration. I'm going to read very fast the proposition that invites us here. Free market President Javier Milei of Argentina has been making tangible progress towards improving.
Do it a little bit more slowly.
Okay, perfect. Free market President Javier Milei of Argentina has been making tangible progress towards improving the Argentinian economy. Except for the name and the surname, I think I could argue every single one of that proposition, but I chose two conflict concepts that I find in this proposition. The first one is, of course, the tangible progress. What do we think when we talk about tangibility in the streets? What do you think when you talk about tangibility? Something you can touch, something you can experience, something you can witness with some of your senses, right? Something you can see, something you can taste. Well, the only tangible in Argentina in the last 11 months is the suffering. There are no tangible progress at all in Argentina. Let me go through some tangible information about what's happening in my country, and that you can feel it, you can watch it down the streets, you can watch it in our neighborhoods, you can watch it in every single province in Argentina. This is what's happening, and this is the data that Santiago smartly hid. We have already, nowadays, 25 million people beneath the line of poverty. Since Javier Milei is in charge, 10 million people fell into the line of poverty in Argentina. Since November, we have, until the horrible administration of Cristina Fernández de Kirchner and Alberto Fernández de Kirchner, we have, until now, 15 million people beneath the line of poverty. Now we have 25 million people beneath the line of poverty. That's tangible in Argentina. That's what's tangible in Argentina, 10 million people that fell into poverty. We have now 8.5 million people beneath line of indigency in Argentina. Since Javier Milei is in charge, we have new 3.5 million people that fell into indigency. Now that's what's tangible in Argentina. That it's happening as we speak right now in Argentina. This is tangible. This is the real tangibility. You want more tangibility? 1 out of 10 people, Argentinian people, were poor. When Javier Milei took administration, now they're beneath the line of indigency. People are falling down out of the system in Argentina. That is what's tangible. That is what you can feel. That is what you can see. And that is what you can sense in the despair, in the violence that my president, sadly, my president, is spreading through network, through media, and through a lot of supporters, sadly. But Javier Milei did much more harm than that cold number, right? Because Javier Milei's adjustment that Santiago is celebrating 0.4, you said 0.4, right? 0.4 of the benefit, 0.4. Well, in the lowest classes in Argentina, in the working class in Argentina, when Javier Milei took charge, he froze the minimum wage. Do you know how much a worker earns in Argentina as a minimum? $270. $250. It's about 2,700 pesos, Argentinian pesos. Do you know how much do you need in Argentina not to be poor? 1 million pesos. That's about $900. So, if you're a part of a family with 4 members and mom and dad work and earn the minimum wage, not only they're gonna be poor, but they are now struggling with indigency. Now that's what's tangible in Argentina. This is what Argentina is living right now, and this is new. This is since Javier Milei is in charge. That's what's the tangible suffering. There's no tangible progress in Argentina. Javier Milei is celebrating a 0.4 surplus paid by Argentinian people. 30% of Javier Milei's brutal adjustment is explained in our retired people, in our elder people. Do you know why? Because Javier Milei, when he assumed, froze our retirement pensions. Do you know what's the cost of them? $250. So we have approximately 8 million people, retired people in Argentina. We have approximately 6 million people, retired people, that earns the minimum pension in Argentina. So we have 6 million retired people that are living beneath the line of poverty. But Javier Milei didn't stop that. He also put away medications from the pension plan. One of my best friend's grandmothers died 2 months ago because she couldn't access to his medication. Do you know what was the value of that medication? $1,000 per month. Well, with $290, you have to eat, you have to live, and you have to buy your medication. That's what's tangible in Argentina. This is the tangible progress. I have nothing against Soho Forum or Reason Foundation, but this proposition is very, very, very inaccurate, because what we are living in Argentina is a deep suffering, is a deep despair, and there is consent in this. Some people, some Argentinian people, like Santiago and his friends, think that this sacrifice is for good, is for something better. We're making a sacrifice to a better future. I saw this movie. I am 33 years old. I saw this movie 3 times in Argentina, and with a history lesson that Santiago gave to you people, I know every single end, because the names sadly always repeat. These things happen in Argentina every 10, 15 years. Javier Milei's adjustment, Javier Milei's 0.4 surplus adjustment is explained in the lowest class, as I was just saying, retired people, as I was just saying, middle class and working class people. Do you know how many small and medium companies went to bankruptcy since Javier Milei took charge? 15,000 small and medium companies. Just for you to have a comparison, with the terrible Alberto Fernandez and Cristina Fernández de Kirchner administration, in a year and a half with the pandemic, with our quarantine, 30,000 small and medium enterprises went to bankruptcy. So Javier Milei, only in 11 months, and without a pandemic, is halfway there. This is what's tangible in Argentina right now. More than 500,000 jobs were lost with Milei's public policies. This is what's happening because he's attacking every single of economic classes. This is not a defense for the lower class or for the middle class or for the higher class. This is a defense of my and Santiago's, of our country. We have nothing against Milei. We're against his policies because he's celebrating nothing. There's nothing to celebrate in Argentina. The tangibility in Argentina, the only that's tangible in Argentina right now, is the sadness, is the despair, and it's the suffering that this administration is making to us. I am a son of public university. In Argentina, for those who doesn't know this, we have a fully funded, public, tuition-free university system. I am from Buenos Aires University. We have public university system that are world-class, top ranked in the world. In every ranking you'll find Buenos Aires University, Rosario University, Córdoba University, La Plata University, ranked in the top 40, 50, 60, 70, it depends on the ranking. And do you know what Javier Milei wanted to do with that? He proposed to defund them. And do you know what Javier Milei told us there is no money. Okay, so to fund this university system, this funding demand 0.14 of GDP. Do you know what Javier Milei was doing? Meanwhile, he was saying that to us. He was making one of the biggest exemptions to the richest people in Argentina that demanded 0.40 of the GDP. So there is money. There isn't decision. There is not. Milei is taking forward, is carrying on a vision of country without professionals, without qualified workers, without Argentinian industries. Because Javier Milei, and this leads me to the second conflictive point of this proposition, is not a free market defender, guys. He's not a libertarian. He's not an anarcho-capitalist or whatever. Javier Milei is a communist. Javier Milei is a leftist, guys. He believes in state intervention. We have 3 major taxes in Argentina. Income taxes, I think you know. Retention taxes. Retention is a grain export tax that Argentina has. And a little thing called CEPO, that Santiago explained briefly, that it's a battery of heterodox public policies in order to maintain and control price of the dollar, the amount of dollars in market, and it contains several bans, such as the prohibition of Argentinian companies to, for example, export goods and services from foreign countries. So, income taxes. Since Javier Milei is in charge, he promised to eliminate. He not only did not eliminate, but he also expanded. There's more people now who pay income taxes than before. No, he didn't stop there. You can check the budget. We're now discussing the budget project for 2025. In the budget project, he's planning to increase income taxes from 4% to 5% of GDP, the so-called libertarian president. We have the retention taxes. It's a grain export retention. We have an extra tax for those grain exporters in order to maintain our local market in Argentina controlled. Well, Javier Milei not only did not eliminate, but he increased in 2024, and in the budget of 2025, he's planning to go from 0.96% of GDP to 1.43% of GDP, the so-called libertarian president. We have this thing called CEPO in Argentina, a Soviet public policy, implemented by a leftist government in Argentina. But Javier Milei is celebrating his profit of the budget thanks to that Soviet measure. What is he doing with this? He's planning to, by law, in 2024, the CEPO should turn off, right? Well, Javier Milei is planning to renew it, to postpone it. You know why? Because this allows him to have dollars to sell to you guys and to my fellow Argentinian friends that he's having any kind of succeed in Argentina. Oil taxes, guys, from 0.38% of the GDP to 0.73% of the GDP. Javier Milei is a Soviet president. He likes to have the state to his favor and to his friends' favor in order for him to get rich and for his friends to get rich. He hates liberty. In any other case, he would support universities. Universities in Argentina, and Santiago won't let me lie to you about this, is one of the main factors that explain progress in Argentina, real tangible progress in Argentina. Because it lets you be who you want to be. It let me be who I wanted to be. And Javier Milei wanted to defend it. That is what Javier Milei is. In campaign, Javier Milei promised to chop off one of his arms before increasing a tax. I'm not going to ask to you, Santiago, to lend an arm to Javier Milei. But I'm going to ask someone in Milei's administration to lend him an arm, because he not only didn't eliminate any of taxes, but he increased them, and he increased at least 3 or 4 of them. And I want a president with all of his arms, or at least one of his arms. So somebody's gonna have to lend him an arm and to lend him maybe one leg to fulfill his promise, because he failed. He failed to his voters. He failed to Argentinian people. He failed to Santiago Forster. He failed to a lot of young people, good-intended people, that was waiting for a liberty government. Javier Milei likes and loves state. That's why he earned, at least until now, $500,000 making trips to United States, for example. Do you know how much investment Javier Milei collected until now? 0. I mean, if you give me $1 now, I'm going to bring more investments than Javier Milei did in his entire administration. Because Javier Milei is inefficient, interventionist, and he loves to have the power of the state. Because Javier Milei's administration is integrated by people who lives out of the state. The state since, I don't know, 1990, 1985, since Santiago was telling Argentinian history. This is what Javier Milei is, friends. Javier Milei is not making any tangible progress. We have no progress in Argentina in any social, economical, cultural class. Javier Milei is making tangible suffering, and Javier Milei hates free market, and that's why he increased electricity tariffs, oil tariffs, gas tariffs, energy tariffs, because he is a Soviet president in a costume of a libertarian. Thank you very much.
Rebuttal from Santiago, 7.5 minutes. Take it away, Santiago, for your rebuttal.
Well, Agustín, if you've seen every movie, then you know how it ends when you govern. I want to tell you one thing. You said that Milei is a Soviet. I mean, props for creativity, honestly. That's the first time I've heard of that. But I think that in regards to that, is it Soviet-like, is it statist-like to reduce ministries from 18 to 8? The biggest cut of a state in the history of the world from one day to the next. As soon as Milei got into power, 18 to 8 ministries. Does that seem Soviet? Does that seem like something that Stalin would have done? Does that seem like something that a centralized government would do? Because according to Agustín, Milei's power depends on the state, but why is he reducing it then? You know? That's a big point I think Agustín is getting wrong. But I think the gravest point that Agustín is getting wrong is that this debate, first off, is a matter of the 3 legs of the economy that I mentioned, which are fiscal, monetary, institutional, or structural, however you want to call it. Agustín really didn't address any of those 3 points. He kind of glanced over fiscal by mentioning something of public finance regarding the cepo. Unfortunately, this debate is about macroeconomics, about the situation of Argentina's inflationary problem. It's not really about public finance or related to the cepo, but even if the debate was that, I can get into that if you want to. For example, regarding the cepo, it's actually related to the tax amnesty that Milei is proposing. So in the tax amnesty, what people do is they bring their funds, their money, and they declare it to the government, the equivalent to the IRS of Argentina. What's been going on there is that it's the first stage of asset regularization in the economy. It extends till the 8th of November was the first extension. And then so far, $18 billion have been deposited in cash alone through this tax amnesty. It's a resounding success, and the second stage will extend until February 7 of 2025, with a rate of 10%, and the third until May 7, 2025, with a rate that amounts to 15%. This is an issue of public finance. I'm reiterating once more. This is not the motion at hand. It's not measuring tangible economic progress in the economy, but even, I want to reiterate, even if we went into that debate, Agustín still loses on that front. So, in regards to the actual debate at hand, what progress has Milei been doing? Let me remind you guys. Institutional, fiscal, and monetary. The monetary base has been shrunk so much that inflation has gone down from a projected 190% inflation last year by Alberto Fernández and Cristina Kirchner to 2.7% inflation today. How is that robbing from the popular classes, from the most vulnerable classes? How is that robbing from them if you're giving them back money through deflation, through creating less inflation? How are you robbing them? You're not. You're actually giving back to them. And also, I'd like to mention one thing. Agustín, he mentioned suffering as a concept. Were people fine before Milei, Agustín? Where was poverty heading before Milei? Poverty, let me tell you where it was heading. We were projected to have hyperinflation. Do you guys know what hyperinflation does to a country? Look at Venezuela. Look at Cuba. That's what happens when hyperinflation takes realm in a country. So we're solving the structural issues to get to the issues that are really important, which is growing the economy, which, by the way, according to JP Morgan, according to BBVA, the economy will grow respectively 8.5% or 6%, according to those two institutions next year, which far overachieves the shrinking of the economy that had to happen as a contraction based on Massa's inflationary policies and his poor monetary policies and fiscal policies. So I want to reiterate, this debate, I think, has been very clear that, first off, Milei, he defines himself as a anarcho-capitalist. He says he governs practically as a minarchist. That's because there are certain barriers in place that makes him have to go between the realms that exist in a society, which is government, you know? It's idealistic, it's utopic to want to govern as an anarcho-capitalist, so he admits that. But he also says that we're going in the right direction, and I personally believe that. And Agustín, I appreciate also you speaking for me, saying that he's letting me down, but the people who let me down were the government that was in place in 2021 when I left Argentina to study in the US. That was Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, that was Alberto Fernández. And the fact that Agustín, again, you have committed no crime, which is why you're still in time to come over to the side of Milei. But your boss, that's a different story. Martín Lustó was the Minister of Economy for Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, the most corrupt politician in the history of Argentina. She was just convicted of criminal charges a few days ago for corruption. And let me tell you one thing. Martín Lustó, when he had the chance, he fumbled and he did not deliver to the Argentine people. Now we're taking a drastically different approach, which is solving the structural problems at hand in Argentina to then give back to the people in the way they deserve through real economic growth and not through Keynesian economics that have been implemented in these last 20 years of governance. And even though you try to distance yourself from those policies, it's impossible to when your boss was in cahoots with them and he was in that government. It's as simple as that. He was in Cristina Fernández de Kirchner's government. He tried to increase taxes on the most productive sector of the economy, by the way, with La Ley 125, Law 125, where he tried to, as I mentioned, increase taxes on the most productive sector of society. And I think based on that, really there's a few other policies to mention regarding how people have been helped, vulnerable people, but overall, we have seen how the main legs of the economy, fiscal, monetary, and structural, have been made in tangible progress by this government. They've been improving those aspects. And Agustín, I think even though your arguments sounded compelling, they are not facing reality. Thank you.
Question?
I love how my libertarian friends fight with the data, fight with the information, right? This is the information that our economy minister spread it on the news. The adjustment was made 30% by retired people, 30% by working class people, especially construction, 20% in tariffs, 760, for example, in electricity tariffs, and the rest in subsidies that middle class were paying. So I love how this is a fine catch by people like Javier Milei or his administration. They always demand sacrifice, but the catch is that they never do any sacrifice. They're never willing to do any sacrifice. They hope that always another takes the sacrifice that is required for the country to improve. So I want to talk about that inflation rate that Santiago was mentioning, because it's not important the what; it's more important the how you do things in politics and in economy. In Argentina, we need major surgery in our economics, and the actual government is putting band-aids. And I will let you know why I think that. The inflation rate and the ratio peso Argentinian peso and US dollar is stable. That's true. Do you know why? I'm going to tell you a story about carry trade. The carry trade in Argentina is, I feel like the old man of Dark, the TV series. It's happening again. I mean, this is the third time in Argentina that we have the same minister, Federico Sturzenegger, our dodgy minister, that is ruining our lives. While Santiago was telling that catastrophic histories that ended up with dead people, poverty, unemployment, more debt in Argentina, it always repeats the same name, Federico Sturzenegger, and it's repeating for the second time in our history, Luis Caputo, our economic minister. So this is a story about carry trade and how inflation and how the peso, Argentinian peso and US dollar continue stable. Okay, so I'll give you a bond guaranteed by the state. Parenthesis. Luis Caputo just, we heard by the news, Luis Caputo sent gold bars from our national treasury without passing through Congress to the United Kingdom. Do you know why? We don't know. We don't know either. Supposedly, it's a guarantee for creating these bonds, but no one agreed to do that. Well, Argentinian state create bonds with a huge interest rate. So you, investor, come and give me your dollars. So with these dollars that I get for you, because I promised your money back plus a huge interest rate, I contain the demand of dollars in the market. And I contain the amount of dollars. Don't remember always the cepo. With the cepo, with the Soviet measure, the cepo, I can control the price of the dollar, I can control the amount of dollars in market, and I can ban, for example, national companies to import goods and services from foreign countries. What I'm implementing with that, of course, inefficiency in my companies, and I'm discouraging foreign companies to invest in Argentina because they can't handle their dollars. So Caputo has these tools. And what do they do? They control inflation with the dollars that they got from these bonds, from this carry trade. They keep for a certain amount of time, but what is the catch in here? That there comes a day when investors come to Argentina and ask for their money plus interest. But there's no money because Federico Sturzenegger and Luis Caputo sold all of your dollars and used those dollars to keep an inflation rate that is a lie. This is what's happening in Argentina right now, because this was what happened, as Santiago Forster was explaining to you, that happened in 2001. Do you know what was the inflation rate? In November 2001, the month before Fernando de la Rúa, from my party, flew away out of the government. Do you know who was the minister there? Federico Sturzenegger. The actual minister, the current minister of Javier Milei. So, do you want to know what was the inflation rate? Minus 1.2%. They are celebrating fumble numbers, fake numbers. This is all fugazi. I don't know how it's pronounced. This is a charade, fellas. This is what we are living in Argentina. This is what they're celebrating. Do you know why? Because they're using US dollars to make their own businesses. And then when you come back to get your dollars back, well, I think we'll see each other in court, because Federico Sturzenegger and Luis Caputo could fly away probably to America, and 10 years in the future they'll come back as ministers of another administration with different hairstyles. But again, we're gonna trust again in them. I don't know why. That's a problem. That's an Argentinian problem. We have no memory. But this is what happens in Argentina in a cycle. I saw this movie in 2001. I saw this movie in 2016, and it's happening again. Inflation and the value of the dollar is a phony, it's a fake, because they're using dollars from foreign investors. They stepping up with the cepo in the price of the dollar, and they killed consumption in Argentina, the lowest meat consumption. Argentina is the world capital of meat consumption. This is the lowest meat consumption in Argentina in 30 years. For us, not to eat meat is like for you guys not to watch the Knicks. You have forbid to watch the Knicks. Okay, this is the same for us. We cannot have a barbecue together, an asado. We call it asado. This is what's happening in Argentina right now. So this is a charade. Milei, Sturzenegger, and Caputo has a plan, and it's nothing to do with liberty. It's nothing to do with freedom. And of course, as I said before, because the proposition had to do with tangible progress. There is no tangible progress for anyone in Argentina, maybe except Milei, Sturzenegger, Caputo, and their friends. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Before we move to the Q&A, I wanted to take moderator's prerogative to ask each of you a question. Agustín, we Americans, of course, are here, and we heard from Santiago, inflation rates that sound just mind-boggling. Here in the U.S., we've had an inflation rate of less than 10%, and it's been cause of great distress. We hear inflation rates in the triple digits in Argentina. You commented on inflation just now. Are you saying, number one, are you saying that price inflation is not a great problem in Argentina, or are you saying that it has been a problem, but that Milei's approach to the problem is not a solution? And if so, could you tell me what is the solution to inflation that runs over 100%? How do you deal with that kind of price inflation?
Well, first of all, I want to say that Milei's inflation is 109% this year. So he has not solved. Let me remind you guys that Milei's inflation in December was 25% monthly, and in January was 20% monthly. So, of course, inflation is a huge problem in Argentina. It's a huge issue in Argentina, and that is why the previous government, the horrible previous government, lost elections. I agree with that, but Milei is not solving the root of these problems. He's just getting dollars, as I explained recently, with the carry trade, with cepo, with the GLAMP, in English is GLAMP, And of course, I mean, there's a place here in the United States and in Argentina too where it's zero inflation, the cemetery.
Well,
Do you know why? Because nobody buys anything. There's no consumption in the cemetery. So here, now, in Argentina, we need to produce more. We're not producing anything in Argentina. We have no industries. We have no companies. I want a lot of rich companies in Argentina. Javier Milei is going against that battle.
Well, but no, just the second part of my question, though. You seem to have agreed that absolutely mind-boggling price inflation, mind-boggling to an American at least, has occurred in Argentina. And you're saying that Milei has not dealt with it properly. How would you deal with that kind of price inflation? What's your solution?
Well, my solution is that the adjustment that Milei did needed to be done, but not at this velocity. It's a question of speed. It's a question of pace. There was a pace that, I mean, variables in economy doesn't have good results when people are dying in Argentina. In Argentina, people are starving. We have kids in Argentina are not eating the recommended meal, the meal recommended by the World Health Organization. And that is because Milei's devaluation and Milei's inflation rate and all of the battery of public policies of adjustment that Milei did left out to their own luck to 40 to 44 million Argentinian people. This is what he did with his public policies in 10 months. You could have done the same thing in 2 or 3 years.
Could you comment on the question and the answer of that price inflation, Santiago? What's your comment?
Are you asking
about
how to fix
the
inflation?
same question and the comment on the answer?
Okay.
What is your comment?
So my comment on Agustin's answer is the following. First off, he blamed Milei for 25% inflation in December. That was the month he became president. So, I mean, that's very unfair, I think. And now it's at 2.7% inflation. So I think he's done quite a lot of tangible progress in that regard. Then you talk about economic activity. GDP is forecast to increase 8.5% in 2025 after an unfair inheritance received by Javier Milei. And then you talk a lot about the carry trade and the cepo and everything. That's, as I mentioned once again, public finance. That's not measuring tangible economic progress in Argentina. And what measures tangible economic progress is 2 things, in my opinion. You're right. 3 things. The 3 pillars that I've always mentioned: fiscal, monetary, and structural. And people, by the way, are their real wages are increasing again for the first time after the previous government. Real wages are increasing. The GDP is forecast to increase. And we are reducing inflation. And when you mention also the cepo, even that's not the debate at hand, but even in that regard, we have 18 billion pesos in reserves because of the tax amnesty that is being done with the cepo. That, I think, is an impressive figure. So I don't know what dollars you're talking about that are being sent to the Cayman Islands or to the Soho Forum or to wherever in the world you say they're being sent to, but they are getting a lot of reserves in dollars. They are trying to close the gap between the official and the unofficial exchange rate, which has been closed quite decently. When you compare it to the previous government, it's crazy how much they've closed it, as a matter of fact. The previous government, for all you who don't know, they had an official and an unofficial exchange rate. That he's talking about communism, right? And in the official exchange rate, right, the government created a fantasy in which the dollar was worth whatever was in their head that day, right? So you would convert it to whatever was worth in their head that day. It was like somewhere around 300, 400 pesos for the dollar, what they were saying. And the official exchange rate ballooned over 1,000. So there was a difference, an abysmal difference between the official and the unofficial exchange rate. Now that rate has been closing and closing. Now the unofficial and the official are almost merging in terms of being exactly identically the same, which is a great progress, and that is a direct result of the very positive fiscal, monetary, and sorry, one more thing, Gene. Sorry. One more thing. Federico Sturzenegger is not the Minister of Economy. No, okay? No, yeah, but Federico Sturzenegger isn't. And that's a very important point as well, because you made a lot of emphasis on the fact that Federico Sturzenegger, he's not managing the economy.
No, I told it was Luis Caputo.
Okay, good. And the person who is managing the economy is implementing exactly all these policies that I've mentioned. He's focusing on structural changes, and he's going towards a very positive path. And one more thing, because you mentioned this as well, you also said that it's too fast. It's too fast of an adjustment. We were on the brink of becoming Venezuela 2.0. I don't think there's a fast enough adjustment you can do to get out of that situation. We are creating an economy that is beneficial for all. Targeted social policies are
gentlemen, you answered the question about inflation. I have a question for you, Santiago. Again, I think I heard from your opponent that since Milei has taken over, rates of poverty have increased, and that the material conditions of life of the typical Argentinian have fallen. I would regard that as a part of economic performance. Yeah. Is that a fact that you concede that people are not living as well now as they did before Milei took over? Do you concede that point? If not, why not? What's your refutation?
I do not, because the previous government has to take responsibility for the horrible, horrendous fiscal, monetary, and structural policies they have implemented. They have taken Argentina to the brink of being one of the poorest nations in the world, and Milei had to take us out from that dirt. We are now, it's according to Universidad Torcuato Di Tella, one of the most prestigious universities in Argentina, just came out last week. Poverty has gone from 52 to 49 since the beginning of Milei's, 49% since the beginning of Milei's. That's correct. Look at Universidad Torcuato Di Tella's report that they just came out with last week. It was just published. I have the source right here. And there's a fact there, which is poverty is on the way down. It shouldn't have gone up, but the fact that it went up was due to a abysmal inheritance from the previous government. And also you mentioned people's quality of lives are deteriorating. Well, real wages for the first time since the previous government are starting to increase for the first time. And also, targeted social policies, I keep mentioning this, but it's important. Pensions are being raised over the inflation rate, and there has been an increase of 100% of the tarjeta alimentar. The tarjeta alimentar is kind of like the equivalent of the EBT card in the US. And that policy is directed straight, it's in the Ministry of the Human Capital. You can look at their website. 100% increase. It's being targeted at these vulnerable populations because they are suffering, it's true, due to a very, very poor inheritance that Milei received. And now all the indicators are showing how we're leaving that recession. Officially, we left a recession last month.
So you agree with me that they're suffering? So there's no tangible progress.
But you can't tell me
Perfect.
that.
Perfect.
No.
I'm happy that we agree with that.
Yeah, but that's a trap.
The tangible progress for the proposition. So the GDP forecast, you were saying right now. Do you know how much I don't know if your data is from IMF, but do you know how the IMF forecasted for this year the GDP growth? 3.5% of growth. Do you know how much are we? Minus 3.5%. So if your forecast tell me it's sunny, I'm gonna go out with an umbrella, because all of that forecast are always a lie, and it's based on nothing. On nothing, on plain nothing, and on promises that Caputo and Sturzenegger, that you are defending so strengthfully, have context with. So, I mean, the data about the decreasing of poverty is a plain lie, or is I don't know. Maybe the study was made inside the university. okay, I don't know. But poverty is growing in Argentina from 53% to 55%. The tarjeta alimentar that Santiago Forster is describing contained less products than before. And yes, I agree with that. I agree with something with Santiago. The previous administration was horrible, was tragic, but has nothing to do with this administration. You could have different things containing these people, and that is very visible with the university issue. 0.14% of the GDP was required to fully fund our university system. Javier Milei refused to do that. Meanwhile, he was given 0.40% of the GDP to make one of the biggest exemptions ever to the top 1,000 people, wealthiest people of Argentina. That's the reality. It's not a matter of money, it's a matter of priorities.
Can I please?
Well, you can. We really need to give the audience a chance to ask questions. Could you line up at the microphone? Those of you who have questions to ask, please. No need to identify yourself. Just please ask the question. Ask a question and try to minimize the speeches. Question, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. I have a question for Santiago. Milei promised to dollarize the Argentine economy and to abolish the central bank. He has reneged on both of those promises. Is there any reason why we should not view him as just one more politician who promises a lot of things during the election and then doesn't carry through?
Abolish the central bank, and then what else was the question?
To dollarize the economy.
Oh, yes, to dollarize the economy. Yes. For Santiago, go ahead, yes.
Well, they're exactly moving toward that end goal, and Milei is not another politician. The reason why he's not just another politician is because if you look at one fraction of the 10 campaign promises he made, I'm going to give 10 just to say a random number, right? He's already gone through like 7 or 8. He's gone through them and he's done them. And the one big one is exactly that. You said 2 of the big ones, dollarization and closing the central bank. But all of the policies that you have to implement leading up to those 2 points are being implemented. We have reserves like never before in our central bank with dollars, and that is actually what you need to dollarize the economy. How are you going to dollarize without dollars, you know? So he's actually doing that through the tax amnesty and through other policies that I mentioned. And as I mentioned, again, the 3 points that I have been talking about have been very clear: fiscal, monetary, and structural, and those 3 points are what are leading toward those 2 end goals that you were mentioning. You can't dollarize from one minute to the next. But also, in regard to what Agustín said, I just want to respond to one quick thing as well, because he mentioned that my forecast says one thing, his forecast says another. His forecast is the previous year, my forecast is the following year. So if you have a 3.5% contraction of the economy, but then you have an 8.5 increase of the economy the following year, 2025, you have a net growth of the economy.
Comment from you.
I'm going to go with some data about dollarization. Brazil made a devaluation of 20% in South America. The only currency in Argentina in the world, in the emergent countries that didn't devaluate was Argentina. So there is no way Javier Milei can fulfill that promises. He doesn't have the amount of dollars required. He doesn't have the policies aimed to do that. Javier Milei is making a country very expensive in dollars. In fact, prices are equally to, for example, New York City. And he is aiming to make a strong peso, despite of what, it's one of 100, 150 promises that he didn't fulfill, considering his campaign.
Next question.
Hi, this is a question for Santiago. I'm just reading some data from an article a few months ago from the Association of Small and Medium-Sized Businesses, IPA, and they talked about employment has fallen in all sectors of the economy since Milei took office, and the situation is bound to get worse in the months ahead. And they talk about destruction of companies, not just jobs, and they say even if there is GDP growth next year, are those jobs going to be replaced? And you could talk about, even if 8% GDP growth happens, what's the chances of those jobs being replaced? Thank you.
Santiago?
Well, first off, with GDP growth, you necessarily also have job growth. And another fact is that we're trying to transition from a model in which we're one of the countries with the highest public sector employment in the region to one of the countries with the highest private sector employment. We want to reach that model. But to reach that model, well, I didn't get to ask you what month that was actually the month that you were mentioning that study came out. But to reach that model, you have to liberalize the economy. You have to open up to FDI, foreign direct investment. That's exactly the criticism that I think also Agustín shares, which is that there has to be economic growth. But to have economic growth, it can't be, you can't magically poof, here, economic growth. No, you have to stimulate the economy, you have to give incentives, and one of those incentives is opening up to foreign investment. And by increasing that investment in the economy from the world to Argentina, you are increasing GDP, and therefore, you are creating jobs. That's how it works. So, yes, I think we're on the right track, and we're going to be creating more jobs.
Comment?
Yeah, I wonder where those jobs are going to be created, because there is no motivation for any investors to create a job in Argentina. The only way that a foreign company, that a foreign investor could invest in Argentina is in our financial market. The model of Luis Caputo and Federico Sturzenegger is Panama. It's a financial country with nothing to produce, with nothing to offer to society, with nothing to offer to the region, and a country that could import everything. This is what's happening in Argentina, and that explains the amount of jobs that were lost, and the amount of, as you were saying recently, the amount of small and medium businesses that went to bankruptcy. This is why Javier Milei and Luis Caputo and Federico Sturzenegger and all of the economic team, this is what they're aiming to. There is no reason to believe that they expect to create new job positions in Argentina. All of the economic plan of Argentina for 2025 is to create new bonds, to get new dollars, to maintain stabilized inflation, to maintain stabilized the ratio peso-dollar, and that to make a safe departure to the 2025 elections. That is what Milei is thinking about right now.
Next, you asked your question already, right?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Last month I did.
Sorry.
My understanding, limited understanding of Argentina is a lot of the problem has been unions have kind of a stranglehold on the economy, especially under Perón, and that's kind of what Perón stood for, I think. So does Milei have any program for increasing the right of workers to compete for jobs? Or is that really not a problem? This would be primary for Santiago.
Question about labor unions. I think it's probably addressed to Santiago, but why don't you take it first? A question about labor unions and their role in the economy. What is the future of labor unions under Milei?
For unions?
Labor unions.
Well, we are having much trouble with that in Argentina. Recently, we have a law that Milei promised to sanction in these days, and he sent his deputies to vote against it. Today at midday, we suffered this loss in the legislative branch. My party, in fact, presented a law to regulate that, and Javier Milei, who promised to join the struggle, well, he negotiated with unions, and now we are having trouble. We're having troubles with this issue. So I don't think that I don't think that the working market, the job market, is going to be more competitive with these public policies at all.
Comment from Santiago about labor unions.
No, I'd just like to comment that first off, the labor unions in Argentina, it's not the same in Argentina with labor unions than in the US and in other developed nations. In Argentina, specifically, they're very pervasive. They stifle economic progress and growth, they bring people out, for example, to the streets. They hire buses and they bus people out to the streets to manifest against the government and against economic policies. That is done nefariously. That is done on purpose by the labor unions. And for example, what Milei has done in regard to that is it's called Protocolo Anti-Piquete. So in English it would be anti-riot protocol. And essentially that enables free transit in the streets so that these labor unions don't cut traffic, you know? So, for example, that's one role that Milei, that's one position that Milei has taken against these labor unions. And unfortunately, they're not fulfilling the role that they're intended to fulfill, which is to protect the worker. They're not doing that. They're actually taking advantage of the workers. They're, in many cases, being used. Sorry, one more thing. Yeah. In many cases, they're being used as they're inserting themselves as middlemen between the worker and their pay. So they use that as leverage over them, as blackmail. If they don't do exactly what they tell them, for example, going to these riots and cutting the streets, then they'll hold that money over them and they won't give them the money that they're due. That's what labor unions do in Argentina, for example. And Milei has been attacking that. He set up a call line where he can report against those type of nefarious activities. And he's also been letting traffic flow when they try and cut big, important highways or avenues. So those two things are very important to know.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain why Milei today forged an alliance with labor unions not to pass the reform of the Unions Act. For example, we have union leaders that are since 1980 in our unions. Milei forged an alliance with them, and now the law won't pass in our Congress because of the alliance between labor unions and La Libertad Avanza, the political party of Javier Milei. This happened just today at midday in Argentina.
Gene, can I add one more thing to what he's saying?
Are you agreeing that labor unions are not a progressive force in Argentina?
I agree. I fully agree with that. I fully agree that that the currently way of labor unions in Argentina aren't representing anyone. But I think also that they are huge allies of this government. In fact, the protocol that Santiago Forster was mentioning never worked. We have 3 general strikes in Argentina, and it never applied. Do you know where the protocol applied in Argentina? When the retired people that are suffering, that are earning, as I told you guys, $270, there the protocol worked. Our police beat the hell out of our elder people. That is when the protocol worked in Argentina, not with the union strikes.
I couldn't disagree more.
Next question, please. Next question.
Is how free market is going to help the situation. I read in the Wall Street Journal that venture capital does not want to go into invest their money to support.
The Wall Street Journal, what? Yes.
I think it was today or yesterday that venture capital from the United States, for instance, does not want to go into Argentina to put more money in because there's been sold various defaults on loans. I also understand that Milei wants to, in order to stimulate his economy, and he can't get venture capital to come in, now wants the International Monetary Fund to contribute a couple of $1 billion to Argentina to stimulate the economy. Would you talk about this, please?
I have a question for you, Senator. Wall Street Journal says no loans to Argentina. Yeah.
Well, there's, first off, venture capitals, the role that the venture capitals take in the economy versus the role that the IMF would take are very different. Their purposes serve very different goals. And an IMF loan would be completely different from investment from VCs in Argentina. And that's an interesting point you're mentioning, VCs in Argentina. So first off, to respond to your point, 2 separate things, IMF, VC money, two very different things. And on the VC side, it's very interesting because we've actually had very successful Argentine companies in this government. One is called Walla. It's a digital finance company, among others like Mercado Libre, or which, by the way, you got into quite a fight with the CEO of Mercado Libre on Twitter. And
Just because the Mercado Libre CEO doesn't invest in Argentina.
No, that's actually not true. Actually, that's
true,
very not true, because actually, thank you for mentioning that, because the syndicates, the labor unions, drove him out of Argentina. Now he's reinvesting. He announced billions of dollars of reinvestment in Argentina.
That's a lie.
That's completely false. But in terms of the VC funding, we have amazing examples of companies like Walla, Mercado Libre, and there's one more. It's a unicorn that I'm forgetting the name right now. Globant, that's another one. And those are Argentine companies that have VC funding and that are flourishing. And then on the side of the IMF, you're talking there about structural geopolitical loans based on diplomatic relations between Argentina and the Western world and the IMF. And that solves a different issue. And it could be debated whether or not we should take a loan from the IMF or not. But that's a different debate. Right now, we're debating the tangible progress of this government in the economy. And I just want to reiterate this one more time. I've mentioned 3 points, and those 3 points are very clear.
You can go over them.
And Milei has made progress in them.
Okay, come on, you about outside
I got stuck
capital.
in the Mercado Libre thing.
Outside capital.
But I want to tell something about Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre receives, because it's a great example of what venture companies are doing in Argentina with Javier Milei's allowance. Mercado Libre receives $100 million exemption per year in Argentina. Do you know how much did he invest with Javier Milei? They were hacking and all of that, 75 million. Do you know how much Mercado Libre invested in the communist Brazil with President Lula? $2,500 million. Do you know how much he invested in the communist Mexico of Claudia Sheinbaum? $2,500 million.
Then why does he love Milei?
That is why I'm against those. That is why I'm against those venture companies, but not as an idea, as the people who has the vision of an Argentina that has to kneel beneath them. I don't want any country to kneel beneath any billionaire. Not Elon Musk in America, neither Marco Galperín in Argentina. This is my vision of a country. I want a strong state, I want a strong Argentina, and I want also a strong America.
This will have to be the final question, unfortunately, and you will only be able to answer it in the summary. What is your question, sir?
To what degree has the full implementation of Milei's plans been inhibited by La Libertad having a minority in the legislature, and to what degree might that change with the elections for the legislature next year?
What? Repeat your question. What is it about the election? Repeat your question.
The question was, to what degree has, just repeating it, to what degree has the full implementation of his plans been inhibited by having a minority in the legislature of the same party, and to what degree might that change with the elections next year?
Okay, thank you. We unfortunately have to go to the summaries. Both of our debaters will be at the party, and you can ply them with questions. You can talk to them in Spanish or in English, so there'll be plenty of opportunity for them to answer the question. Meanwhile, we have to go to the summaries, and the summary affirmative goes first. Take it away. 5 minutes of summary. Santiago.
Thank you. So, I want to answer the question of the last gentleman. It was a very good question. What has Milei been able to do with the minority in Congress that he has? Well, let me tell you one thing. Definitely not being helped by Agustín and by his boss, Martín Lustó. He's done a lot. And let me tell you one thing. Most of Agustín's party, no. But your party and your boss is a senator, right? A national senator. And if I'm not mistaken, he has the power to vote laws into power. And he votes against every law that Milei puts into Congress, against every single one. But his party votes for them. A lot of Agustín's party votes for Milei. there is clearly a civil war in that party. I think maybe if you decide what's going on, you'll be able to figure out the future of the Unión Cívica Radical. But in the meantime, while we are governing with a minority, Milei's party is governing with a minority. He's done amazing progress. The Ley Bases, which is the signature legislation, has been passed in which many economic progresses have been made. And let me tell you one thing, as a summary of this debate, because I wanted to answer that question from that gentleman, it was a very good question, but as a summary for the debate, we've gone through three main arguments. We've gone through fiscal, monetary, and structural. Agustín has not tackled a single one of those arguments. The only argument that he's kind of dipped his toe in has been the fiscal one, mentioning carry trade, mentioning the cepo, which is a matter of public finance. That is not measuring concrete, economic, tangible progress in the country. What I have been talking about is economics that are grounded on reality. Economics that show progress from a structural point of view, but then show a way forward for the regular, average Argentine citizen, middle class and vulnerable classes. That is what Milei's government is. We have been talking about so many different topics, but to boil it down once again for you, ladies and gentlemen, Milei is an experiment, and it's proving to pay off. It's 1 year, less than a year of governance, and now poverty is going down again. Now GDP is being forecast to increase exponentially next year. Now wages are increasing for the first time since the previous government. Inflation is being thrashed from 190% projected last year to 2.7% monthly this year, but 25% monthly last year, 2.7% this year, which gives back to the consumer. So, the monetary argument shows that we've shrunk the monetary base, allowing inflation to rest and actually reducing significantly inflation in that aspect. In the fiscal aspect, we've been spending less, we've been cutting spending in ministries, as I've shown you. In the public sector, there's been a 30% cut on the public sector, not on the private sector, on the public sector. And then in the structural element, we are deregulating obsolete laws from the military-era governments that had state corporatism as their main economic model, and we're deregulating Peronist laws that stifled economic progress. If you want to go back to the model of decay, hyperinflation, and complete 95% or more poverty, like Venezuela, be my guest. Agustín is right there. If you want to stay where we're at in the current trajectory, growing the economy, growing real wages, projected GDP growth, and mainly solving the structural issues of the country, the three pillars that I've been mentioning constantly, which Agustín did not touch upon at all almost, then stick with me and this trajectory that I am offering you as a model, because Milei is going down the right path in the economic progress that he's been achieving with his government. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a matter of economic progress. Agustín has gone into public finance. Maybe he just got his master's in finance, I'm not sure. But what I'm definitely sure about is that there have been arguments that he has conceded to me fully. He hasn't even touched upon many of the arguments that I've mentioned today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you become Argentine citizens and can vote for Milei next election. Thank you.
All right. Final summary? No handshaking, guys. Final summary.
Okay, guys. I've never been told that it was the monetary, physical, and institutional branch. I thought that it was about Javier Milei tangible progresses and the free market defender that I was discussing about. As I was told to you, ladies and gentlemen, Javier Milei is destroying our society. Javier Milei destroyed our elder people. Javier Milei is destroying our middle-class people. Javier Milei is destroying our working-class people. And Javier Milei is adjusting in 43 out of 46 million Argentinian people. And this is what they celebrate in Argentina. And this is what they celebrate here, regrettably, because I think Santiago is a great value for the future of my country. I hope you in the Unión Cívica Radical, at least in the good side of Unión Cívica Radical. But I really think that we need to discuss right now what is our project of Argentina, our vision of our country. I dream of an Argentina, of a rich Argentina. I want a lot of wealth in Argentina. I'm not defending any of this crisis. I don't hope that Santiago defends anything of this crisis because he didn't do it. And it's not his fault. It's the fault of the people that is going once and again in our administrations. I want a perfect market in Argentina, guys. But a perfect market in Argentina requires perfect liberty. I'm a liberty fighter, but liberty, fellows, demands justice. Liberty demands equal of opportunities. This is an arranged career. This is a fixed race. There is a bunch of people putting a lot of traps in order to get ahead in our career. And that Argentina can't afford anymore. I want freedom. I want justice. I want development. 15,000 enterprises went to bankruptcy with Javier Milei in only 11 months. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no big company in Argentina that is going to have his annual balances. No one of them is going to end positive. There's not going to be earnings in Argentina. Javier Milei is making tangible suffering in Argentina. And that is why this proposition is fake. And Javier Milei is doing this by the manipulation of the state. Because he told to you guys, he told to me, he was a free market defender. He told my country that he was a libertarian and an anarcho-capitalist, and he is acting like the most Soviet president. He has 9 ministers. He is making the largest monetary emission in Argentinian history. But it's not going to people, it's going to the financial market. And that is how we explain the lower inflation and this data of the relation between the value of the dollar and the value of the peso. This is what's happening in Argentina. Meanwhile, we have 25 million people beneath the line of poverty, 10 million created by Milei, 8.5 million people beneath line of indigency, 3.5 made by Milei. This is what Milei is doing in Argentina. I dream of an Argentina in liberty. Liberty demands justice. I want a developed Argentina. I want that Argentina creates wealth. And that requires that our generation come together, join, defend the value of liberty. But the defending of the liberty values will always require that we think about those who is making sacrifice once and is making sacrifice again. I want to thank you to the audience for listening to me. I learned a lot, and I want to thank you again, Soho Forum, Santiago Forster, and Reason Foundation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Jane, please open the voting. I have in my hand the Soho Forum Tootsie Roll that will go to the debater who moves the vote in his favor. Again, the resolution reads, Free Market President Javier Milei of Argentina has been making tangible progress toward improving the Argentinian economy. If you voted yes, no, or undecided on the resolution the first time, take another look and see if you still want to vote yes, no, or undecided on the resolution. So please vote if you voted already. I also want to make a couple of announcements. Again, encourage you to come to our reception at 55 Great Jones Street, 2 blocks uptown. Follow the throngs, follow me. Both debaters will be in attendance, and you can learn a lot more about these issues if you confront them. You can obviously see they're both extremely approachable guys. So I do invite you and urge you to come. I also want to make a couple of announcements of what is to come at the Soho Forum. We do a debate every month of the year, including summers. The next debate will be, of course, in December, and it will feature Glenn Greenwald debating presidential immunity. That will be on December 11th. We will have it at this hall, and tickets are already selling big time. He is a big draw. He will be debating a professor from Florida International University on the issue of presidential immunity. I urge you to go to our website, thesohoforum.org, thesohoforum.org, where if you just scroll down, you can buy tickets for that December 11th event in this hall featuring Glenn Greenwald. The Sheen Center will be having a regular show starting in January, so we'll be unable to use it for January, February, and March, but we will still be having debates. At Caveat, the sort of club slash auditorium that's to the east of this, a little south of Houston Street, where we did have a couple of debates. We will be returning to a Latino issue, a Latinx issue, I guess I should say, and it will be a debate on El Salvador and Bukele. Bukele of El Salvador, the country where the crime rate has plummeted from extremely high crime to extremely one of the safest countries in the world. There will be a debate about the merits and demerits of what Bukele has done. That will be at Caveat in January, and those tickets are also available. February 2nd, in February, we're finally taking our show on the road to a university. It was prior to the lockdowns that we got a chance to have a debate at NYU, but since then we've had considerable difficulty getting universities to accept any kind of debate. Controversy is clearly no longer their thing, but I have found to my astonishment that Dartmouth, a 4.5-hour drive from here in Hanover, New Hampshire, beautiful campus, in February, will host a debate on the Ukraine war. And we're doing that through the political union. The students there who run a debate society, the head of the debate society there is a fan of the Soho Forum, and he will be very happy to host that debate at Dartmouth. Get in the car, tickets will be on sale. Take a little trip up to Hanover in February when it's nice and cold, but warm inside, and you will get a chance to hear Scott Horton defend his book on the Ukraine war, which is coming out shortly. That will be in February. In March, we won't be able to use this hall. However, we will be going to the Soho Playhouse, another venue that we've used in the past, and that will be a debate on the Israel-Palestine issue featuring Peter Beinart, who has written a book on the subject. That is in March. And I want to ask, I think that we're getting the results of the Tootsie Roll Award that Jane is handing to me. The resolution read that there is tangible progress toward improving the Argentinian economy. The yes vote went from 62% to nearly 70% and picked up 7.6 points. It was very close. The no vote was a minority, but it did pick up 10.8 points, a couple of points extra. Therefore, the Tootsie Roll goes to the no vote. Please come to our party, 2 blocks uptown. Both of you guys are coming, right? Yeah. Yes. See you at 55 Great Jones Street in about 10 minutes.